Hello, everyone, and welcome back to my opinion. And now, the IPL auction it will probably take place on February the 11th. And so, recently, the teams announced who they would be retaining and keeping ahead of that auction. And so, this video is going to be me talking through those updates and giving my take on them. So, I'm going to start off with the champions, and that is the Mumbai Indians. And so, they have released Mitchell McConaughey, James Pattinson, Lasit Malinga, Nathan Kutanao, Shafane Rutherford, Digvijay Deshmukh, and Prince Balwant Rai Singh. And so, out of those, Shafane Rutherford, Digvijay Deshmukh, and Prince Balwant Rai Singh, and also Mitchell McConaughey. I think those four did not play a single game in the tournament. And I was actually surprised they released Pattinson because, yes, he kind of tapered off towards the end of the tournament, but at the start, especially for not really being a renowned T20 bowler and being more of a test bowler, I thought that as the third seamer, he did pretty well, and I thought he did a very good job in containing the runs, and he got a few wickets as well. And I think that his higher economy rate, I think of around 9 and over, was kind of how he bowled towards the end of the season kind of increased that economy rate up a little bit. And so I am a bit surprised that they, didn't retain James Pattinson. But as if IPL is going to take place in India this year, then the conditions will be different. And so maybe the thinking was that Pattinson as a third seamer in more batting friendly tracks in Mumbai may not be the way to go, and you'd rather have someone who's more adapted to bowling in the format. But even then, he did do a good job. So it's kind of two ways you can look at this. One, kind of conditions if the tournament will be played in India, and another one is the fact that he did pretty well. And so if he did well, then shouldn't he kind of still be in the squad? And Lasit Malinga, after being released by Mumbai Indians, or I think even before, he actually informed the management that he was retiring from kind of T20 league, so franchise cricket, and the only thing he plays now is T20 internationals for Sri Lanka. And so I honestly think that after especially I think this T20 World Cup, I'm not sure if he's going to stay around for the next one or not, but especially after this T20 World Cup, it may be the last we see of him. It's kind of because there already aren't many international T20s going on anyway, and especially, he kind of has to maintain himself just to play a few series here and there. And that's why I'm saying that I honestly don't think we will see Lasit Malinga after the T20 World Cup, and it'll be a very sad thing because he's probably been the best limited overs bowler of certainly, in recent years, I would say of the past decade. And so honestly, it'll be really sad to see him retire if he retires, but unfortunately, that's how things go. So yeah, that's Mumbai Indians. Shafane Rutherford, again, a very good player, but I'm saying he didn't get a game. And if you saw the overseas players of Mumbai Indians, I mean, you saw Chris Lynch, Shafane Rutherford, Mitchell McConaughey. And the thing is that it was a very hard team to break into Mumbai Indians because you've got Quinton de Kock, you've got Karen Pollard, you've got Trent Bolt, and I'm trying to remember the other overseas player. I think it was probably would have been either James Pattinson or Nathan Coulter now. So if you look at that team, it's kind of is, hard to break into it because they had Chris Lynn, they had, they could have put either Pattinson or Nathan Coulter now, or Mitchell McConaughey, or Shafane Rutherford. But they probably just, apart from maybe one of them, I don't think the others would have really fit into the team considering the overseas combinations. And so they were a bit unlucky in that. The fact is that I can understand why they released Nathan Coulter now because the fact was that he was a bit rusty, and pretty much every single time he came in and bowled, he didn't manage very well. And we've seen him bowl well. He is a very good bowler, and we've seen how good he was for KKR. But unfortunately, it just didn't work this season, and he actually had an injury first, I think. And that's why Pattinson was ahead of him. But then Coutinho came back, and he was a bit rusty, and so that's why just things didn't work out for him. So again, even he wasn't surprised. surprised rather that he was released. I think he said, I think something like they paid me for the overs I bowled. So that's on Nathan Coulter now. And then again, the reason why is kind of I've not really been able to say much about the Mumbai Indians, kind of their releases, is because they've been the champions. They've been the second team to defend the trophy after CSK all the way back in 2010 and then 2011. So they don't really have many things to think about, and the players that they have released were kind of surplus requirements and are already a very strong squad and probably the strongest squad in the tournament. And so, yeah, that's on Mumbai Indians. I mean, it's a very kind of an uncomplicated role for them, and with only 15.35 crore left, they may be able to get one big name, but apart from that, I'm not really. In fact, then again, in the last auction, they never really bought many players either. And yes, they bought Chris Lynn for 2 crores. They bought Nathan Coulter now, and apart from that, they just kind of got the other domestic players. But then again, if there's one position that I would say Mumbai Indians should improve on, is that I think they should get a third seamer. Definitely, if you negotiated Bolt and Bumrah, you always kind of saw that weakness being there, even though you could say it didn't really come to play during the tournament. And it did come to play one game, because when they both weren't there, you saw that the other bowlers just couldn't string that bowling performance together when Mumbai Indians, I mean, they didn't need it in the context of their situation in the tournament, but they would have needed it to win the game against Sunrisers. And in the end, Sunrisers won the game by 10 wickets in a very toothless bowling performance by the Mumbai Indians. And that's the thing. Another a player like a role that they need to get in the side is a prominent spinner. And I mean, yes, there's Rahul Chahar and Kunal Pandya. Rahul Chahar, he keeps it tight and it's actually bowled very well. Kunal Pandya, he's a clever bowler and just kind of adjusts his line according to the situation. He tends to fire it in. And it's all well and good having those two, but they're not scaring anyone, and there's no real wicket-taking threat if you look past Bumrah and Trent Bolt. So that's something where I think that they're going to have to get this one prominent spinner and even maybe some Indian quick who, like a really kind of a good Indian quick, a decent name, and that they have faith in, so that he can fill that void at that third CM. Because I think there's just that slight vulnerability in the bowling attack, and the reason why they've kind of continued doing this though is because I feel their leadership group and also the Indian core, I think there's a good vibe around that team, and so that's the reason why even their weaknesses don't really seem to flare up that much. And yeah, that's on the Mumbai Indians. Very uncomplicated for them. If they just kind of address those two things that I talked about, I honestly think that this team may even win for the third year in a row. So then there's CSK, and they've released Kedar Jadhav, Shane Watson's retired, Piyush Chawla, Murali Vijay, and I'm not sure if it's Monu Kumar or Monu Singh. I mean, I've got down Monu Kumar, but I'm not exactly sure what his surname is, and Harbhajan Singh, who it may be the end of his career unless some other team buys him for his experience, because even when he played for Chennai Super Kings and he played in India, he kind of played the games at Chepauk where it was tailor-made for spinners, but he didn't play a single game anywhere else. Especially I saw in the 2019 season, he pretty much only played in Chepauk. So there aren't many venues that are tailor-made for. I mean, if you really look, there's Chennai. Delhi kind of has, that pitch is very slow. Hyderabad, I mean, the pitch, you never quite know what it's going to be. It may be flat and it may be, slow. So, I mean, it kind of varies between those two extremes. And apart from that, I mean, yes, there's the Savai Mansingh Stadium in Jaipur, which is slow. So, there are places where he could go, but I'm not really sure that they would they would really be interested in getting him, because especially with the kind of calls that these other teams have made and who should be in their squad, I really don't think that Harbhajan Singh will be in their plan. So if he doesn't get a side, he's had a great career, and I hope that he continues doing well in life. And yeah, that's on Harbhajan Singh. And Kedar Jadhav. So Kedar Jadhav has been released, and I actually think that there is one particular team that he could go to, and yes, it's Rajasthan Royals because he provides that other bowling option as well, and an experienced player after releasing for 2 years in a row. I'll get to Rajasthan Royals, but they released Ajinkya Rahane and Steven Smith, and I'll get to the reasons why. There are two ways you can look at that, but Kedar Jadhav, I definitely feel like, especially for teams that bat on slower conditions, I feel that Kedar Jadhav will definitely be of good use as serving as a bowling option, and is a very good player as well. So he may not feature in every single game, but as to someone having him in the squad and paying a lot less for him than CSK did, I think that it won't really hurt many teams. And yeah, that's on Kedar Jadhav. And Shane Watson is obviously retired, and he's a legend of the game. And I would put him as, I would say he's my favorite all rounder ever, and he's an absolute legend. And I mean that he's batted in many different positions for Australia as well, and he's opened the batting. He's batted in the middle order in Test cricket. He's batted at number three, and I think batted at number seven as well. He's had a great career, and honestly, yeah, I felt very sad when he did retire because he's such a good player. He's such an orthodox player. He doesn't bowl now, but when he was bowling, he took his bowling very seriously. I even remember in his last international match against India at I think it was either Mohali or Dharamshala, when I think it was Dharamshala when Virat Kohli scored that 82. I'm not sure. Either those two grounds, one of those two grounds, and there was this slow ball bouncer that he had, and that was the kind of his delivery to get through one ball in the over when the Indian batsman, well, Virat Kohli, was trying to score runs and win the game for India in what effectively was a knockout game, because the loser of that would have gone to two losses, and in that tournament, two losses would effectively mean that you were knocked out of the tournament, the group stage itself. And Shane Watson, he really wanted to win that game, and he gave everything that he got. And kind of the moment after he retired, you could say this kind of friendly aspect came into his game, and despite the fact that he maintained a high standard of performance, you could tell that age was catching up with him, especially with his fielding. But then again, I mean, I didn't mind. He's Shane Watson, and he's an absolute legend of the game. And as I said, there's some heritage names in the CSK squad that we eventually may have to say goodbye to in the cricketing world, and they'll continue on with their own lives, and they'll be sorely missed. And Shane Watson is one of those names. So to both Shane Watson and Harbhajan Singh, again, best wishes for things ahead. Then there's Piyush Chawla, who's an IPL legend, and he's got more than 150 wickets, and this season really wasn't his season. And actually, if you saw in KKR, even though he was getting older, and he isn't even that old, he's only 32 or 33 now, and when you saw in KKR, he looked very young, even though you would think he'd been bowling for ages, because he had been bowling for ages, and he's been bowling for many consecutive seasons now, and bowling well every season. And this is probably his only off season that he's ever had in the IPL. And I've watched the IPL since 2011, and I've honestly never seen him have an off season apart from this one. And what I mean is, he came to CSK, and he automatically just looked older. And it's not a bad thing, but I mean, he kind of started getting a little bit of stubble here and there, grey hair. And I'm saying this because he didn't have no CSK spinner had the tournament that they would have liked. Jadeja's batting was brilliant, but his bowling, he really got hit around the place. And Chawla wasn't great either, and Karan Sharma wasn't great either. So the three kind of may, and with Harbhajan Singh not playing in this year's IPL, you have three spinners who are having off years, and a spinner in Harbhajan Singh who isn't available. So CSK kind of struggled with that in the 2020 season, and that's the reason why. Look, Piyush Chawla is an IPL legend. He's got 150 wickets, and he just had an off season, and maybe they kind of thought, look, he's 32 years old, which isn't even that old. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if someone else buys him, because he deserves to be bought. He's such a reliable bowler, and really, he's probably one of his most. I say, even though you wouldn't really say he's that well known in the IPL, I would say with his record speaks for himself. I'd sorry say he's one of the most reputable wrist spinners in the league. And so, honestly, I feel that someone ideally would buy Piyush Chawla, and I honestly hope, because he's such a reliable bowler, and I hope he gets the opportunity to continue doing what he does. Then there's Murali Vijay, who, as I said, I would say in this decade, he's actually been one of the best, if not for me, the best test opener that I've seen in all conditions. Because we've seen that, especially over the past few years, openers, I mean, really, apart from him and Alistair Cook and Dean Elgar, Dimut Karnatna, there have been a few people here and there who've been able to play in all conditions. And even then, Alistair Cook has been very inconsistent. In fact, the last part of his career, the last few years of his career, he was very inconsistent. And yes, he scored, when he got in, he scored big runs. But I'm saying that there was always this inconsistency factor with him in the last few years of his career. And generally, the world opening batsmen around the world in internationals have genuinely struggled to get big scores, and batting teams haven't really been getting the runs collectively as you would have seen in the olden days. And I just think it's really hard. I'm not saying it wasn't hard then, but I think that even Alistair Cook said that in his last few years in playing in England were probably one of the most challenging conditions in his career. And you could honestly see that the fact that, again, as I said, he was pretty inconsistent, but not only him, every opening batsman found it tough, and every batsman found it tough, honestly. And that's the reason why, amidst all this, if you look at someone who has scored runs everywhere he's played in, I would say it's Murali Vijay. And he's been my favorite test opener to watch in this decade, and he's probably one of my favorite openers. And so, yeah, I've kind of, he has, like, there was a time when he was really the main man for CSK, and ever since then he kind of was, ever since about the 2011 time, he's kind of been thought as a test player, and he did play very well in tests and formed a solid opening partnership at the top for India in, for many years. But unfortunately, in the T20 game, as I said, I mean, he has been a very good T20 player, but unfortunately, he just seems to be low in confidence. And I just thought that CSK, as I said in a video way back when I was talking about CSK, the fact is that cricket is a game where you need experience, and you need players who are 35 and over in your team as experienced players. And it's not about needing them. I'm saying it's not bad if they're there, if they provide the right energy. And I mean, Ashwin and Shikhar Dhawan are almost 35 years old, and I actually used those two as an example to see the fact that, all right, yes, they're both playing international cricket, and look at the energy they provide for the team. I mean, both of them were standout performers in the season in 2020. I mean, thing is, Ashwin bowled so many economical spells, and honestly, I thought that in his T20 bowling, he's really reinvented himself and tried to tinker with his action a little bit. And we've seen that in this recent India-Australia series, he went back to his orthodox action that he has for Test cricket, and in T20s, it seems to kind of be a bit more, much less flowing, let's just say. I mean, he just tries to changes. He understood that he needed to change his game to adapt, and he did that brilliantly. And yeah, so I mean, that was my segue into Ravichandran Ashwin. And getting back to CSK, if you are 35 and over and you don't provide the energy for the team, and you're not playing regular cricket, then it kind of doesn't really bode well. And that's the reason why CSK had a lot of players who are in this category where they are stalwarts, but when you're older, and even more than older, not getting regular cricket, and when you're older, you're much more likely to, or at least in sport, to improve than, let's say, if someone was 23, 24, and they were really trying to just get through the ranks. And that's the reason why I'm not really surprised that they released Murali Vijay, and I'm not sure if anyone else is going to get him or not. And if they don't, once again, he's been such a good opener for India in Test cricket. And people can troll him however much they want, but I would say he's been, my favorite opener, test opener of this decade, and one of my favorite openers. I mean, he can play all types of bowling and has a good record pretty much everywhere in the world. And yeah, that's Murli Vijay. So CSK has 22.9 crores left, and again, will it be enough to overhaul? I mean, I say overhaul, but at least get some youth into the squad. I'm not so sure because when one thing looks good for them, I mean, they actually have so Kings 11 have the most in 53.2 crores. Then it's RCB with 35.7 crores. Then it's RR with 34.85 crores. And then it's CSK with 22.9 crores. And you could say that CSK don't have much, but they're still fourth. And so there are four sides below them in terms of, you know, the amount of money that they have. But also you look at our Mumbai Indians, I mean, they pretty much have a settled squad apart from making, those kind of roles that I talked about. They're settled, and so you kind of take them out of the race. And also Delhi Capitals, I mean, they kind of, I'll get to them later because they've actually surprisingly released a few players who are actually playing for them in this season. So it'll be interesting to see how they go with that. And yeah, that's CSK. It may not be enough to, get the names in that they would want, but they will definitely be able to get a few names in. And I would say if you can, this may not be that possible considering it'll be a competitive auction environment. Maybe about 4 or 5 crores. If you can just get 4 or 5 players who, of real quality, who you're going to back for the future, I actually think that combined with players who, as I said, you look at Ambati Raidu, Faf du Plessis, they provide the right energy for the squad. And so even though they have age on their side, you don't mind them being there. And so Suresh Raina's also, coming back into the squad. And so I think that with the experience that, that still provides that energy and combined with the younger players, I still think that CSK can look from the auction, and if they get the players that they want, then they'll feel pretty good about themselves. So now KKR. Now KKR have had last 2 seasons of convolutedness, and what I mean is it's not really been rosy. And there's this thing about their side where you look apart from, they have these real T20 stalwarts in my opinion, and that is Dinesh Karthik, Owen Morgan, Andre Russell, Sunil Narayan. Those are the real four stalwarts, and then you have the very good overseas players in T20. I mean, Lockie Ferguson hasn't really bowled much. I mean, the first time I saw him was in 2017, so he hasn't actually bowled that much in terms of experience, and so. Then there's Lockie Ferguson, and then now there's Pat Cummins. And so if you look at this, actually what you see is they do rely on a lot of Indian talent. And it's not a bad thing because you have the likes of Shubman Gill and, Rahul Tripathi is very good as well. And I feel that he just hasn't been given his opportunity at the top of the order. And if he was, we saw how well he did for Rising Pune Super Giant in 2017. And, they got to the final in the end and he was a revelation in that season. And that's the thing that, but he has also done well at number 6 for KKR as well as a finisher. And with Dinesh Karthik also, I feel that then again, whenever they batted him, up top, or I say up top, whenever they batted him about number 4, you saw he got out quickly. And whenever he actually came in the position where, playing as a finisher, he did brilliantly. And so again, I'm not saying that he can't bat time. I feel like it will be the biggest insult to any batsman to say that they can't bat time. And so he wouldn't really be happy that he didn't do that well when he came at number 4. But for the team, I mean, Owen Morgan, I understand he actually bats at number 6 now for England in T20s to accommodate the other players in the squad. And he's also kind of adapted to that finisher's role. And if Owen Morgan batted at number 4, it would be much better because Owen Morgan 4, Russell 5, Dinesh Karthik 6, that would really maximize the output of those group of players rather than mixing it up and Owen Morgan going down. It just doesn't really. I thought it was a very unnecessary move that they did in this 2020 season, and that's the reason why I feel like they first have to get that right. And also, their seamers aren't scaring anyone. They are very good seamers. India has this very good crop of fast bowlers coming through, and we've seen that pretty much always. And even more highlighted by the fact that how they won this series without their main bowling attack. And so I think that it isn't bad having these promising Indian teamers in your side, but it may be a bit of a stretch in really trying to ask them to share the bulk of the load. And I mean, Pat Cummins, as I said, I was surprised they paid 15.5 crores for him, because I thought, and I still do think, his role in T20s and his role in his role in pretty much bowling is very one-dimensional. And there's a reason why he's a number one bowler in Test cricket, because he can just hit a length and the ball does a little bit. He can see, he swings the ball both ways and bowls at pace, and it's a nightmare to face. And he has such good control, such consistency, and that's the reason why in tests where he kind of has a platform to keep on doing the same thing for a whole day and just a whole innings, and bowling many overs. And you've seen with the four bowler attack that Australia have, despite the fact they tried to use Nathan Lyon to kind of just keep on bowling for a while to rotate the others, in the end it is a four bowler attack. You'll feel tired in the Australian summer heat. And so the fact is, he is accustomed to bowling many overs and he's accustomed to really kind of hitting a length, but he isn't accustomed to doing really things too different. And you saw in the IPL and I wasn't surprised by this at all, in the overs he bowled outside the power play, he didn't get much success. And I mean, it's not even about the wickets, Colin, because honestly, he didn't get many wickets apart from that 4 against Rajasthan Royals, which is a bit lucky, and he deserved that luck because he had bowled very well throughout the entire tournament. In the first 3 overs, for Dinesh Karthik's captaincy, he bowled 3 overs in the power play, and for Owen Morgan, he bowled 2 overs. And the thing is that he can't bowl outside the power play, unfortunately. I mean, he goes for runs of the death, and so despite the fact he's a very entertaining bowler to watch, and especially in a power play of 6 overs, in 3 overs you'd get about 19 runs, even though you may not lose a wicket off his bowling most of the time in this IPL that's went past. You'd be 0 of 19 in 3 overs, and in a power play, you'd want to get more than that, and it puts kind of pressure on the batsman to really target the other bowlers. And so I honestly feel that they should. I understand it's tempting to play the kind of the cornerstones of their franchise in some of the overseas players they have, but for me, I honestly think they should play both Lockie Ferguson and Pat Cummins, because if they don't play both of them, I'm not really sure the attack is, can share that bulk, that work, not workload, but the responsibility to get wickets apart from Pat Cummins. And because if he doesn't get wickets, KKR, I saw a rumor that they actually have a good system in their stadium where I heard a rumor rather on Crickbuzz Live where one end is for the seamers and the other end is for the spinners. Because remember, the Eden Gardens pitch used to be a spinner's pitch before, until it was changed to kind of be more for the faster bowlers and kind of a batsman's paradise, and so more to the batsman's paradise side. And the thing is that that's why the spinners have found it harder in recent seasons. Kind of ever since that change is made, it's seen the impact of spinners has kind of gone down. And so maybe Sunil Narayan is a bit injury prone. He doesn't have necessarily the best fitness levels. He has a weakness to the short ball, especially to quality pace bowling. I mean, if you've just bowled medium paces, you saw what happened when Delhi Capitals bowled to Narayan and he scored 64 and changed the game along with Nitish Rana. But the thing is that with him being injury prone and on pitches, on the KKR pitch, that let's just say that there isn't really much turn, and maybe even when they're trying to kind of keep one end for spinners and one end for pacers, if it doesn't work that well, they unfortunately may not really be able to maximize what he can offer in the side. And so you'd rather kind of put Lockie Ferguson in so that he can bowl at the death and Pat Cummins can bowl up front. And I honestly think Kuldeep Yadav, Gautam Gambhir was surprised that they retained him. And honestly, here's the thing. I can understand why he's surprised, and I'm honestly kind of, it's two things here. One, a wrist spinner, a Chinaman who's in India's plans, and you've seen him succeed and how well he can bowl when, as I said, you've seen with Rishabh Pant when he's kind of given that mental platform to kind of go out there and express himself. You've seen how well Kuldeep Yadav can bowl, and we've seen that he's had success. And what I'm trying to say is that the people are kind of under the impression that he's low in confidence, but the fact is he hardly played in this season that's gone by, and so that's why I'm trying to say that the fact that they've retained him, I can understand why Gautam Gambhir is surprised, because as he says, if they retain him, they should play him, because if you're looking at the spinners in the side, I mean local players, Kuldeep Yadav should make that side, and honestly, I think that he should make that side and he should play the majority of the games because, come on, I mean he's in India's plans, and so I feel that he definitely deserves to run the side. And who knows, he may be able to rediscover his confidence. And yeah, that's on Kuldeep Yadav. I feel that they probably will have to play him. And there's Varun Chakravarti, who unfortunately missed India's tour of Australia because he was in the T20 squad, and Natarajan actually came into the side instead of him, and so one man's loss turned out to be another man's fairy tale. And I don't think any of us wanted it to, or even Natarajan would have wanted it to be one man's loss, because they are both a similar age as well, and they both kind of had to wait a while for this opportunity and probably never saw this coming in their lives. And so it would have been nice if both of them were able to even at least in one T20 kind of play together, because as I said, they're both Tamil and they're both around the same age, and both had to wait for their opportunities that they never saw coming, and both had successful IPL stints. And so yeah, that's my take on both of them. I feel very bad for Varun Chakravarti, but obviously he will be playing for KKR, and I hope that he still does get his opportunity for India, because yeah, it was there for him. He deserved to go on a flight to Australia, because he had bowled brilliantly for KKR when he'd actually been put under pressure in many situations when the batsmen were hitting the other bowlers, and he still held his nerve and bowled brilliantly. And that's the thing. I actually think that he could be Sunil Narayan's replacement. We've seen there has been some kind of a mystery bowler type thing there when he bowls, and so I honestly think he could be Sunil Narayan's replacement. And that's on him. I feel very bad that he missed a fight to Australia, considering the kind of tour it turned out to be. But unfortunately, it is what it is. And as I said, it would have been great viewing to see him and Natarajan, both these players who are living their dreams, having to bide their time and playing in the same team. So yeah, that's on him. And yeah, apart from the players who were, apart from Chris Green, actually, I mean, maybe they wanted to free up an overseas slot, and maybe they would have thought, is he really going to get a game, especially in Eden Gardens? But maybe if you go to places like, I don't know, in Delhi, Rajasthan, as Richard said, it may be flat, it may be slow, and you go to Chennai, maybe they could have actually kept him there to kind of give him an opportunity. But it is what it is, and it'll be interesting to see who actually go for him. I'm honestly not sure who will go for him, actually. I'm actually thinking maybe Delhi Capitals will go for him, because yes, they have Akshar Patel as well, and they may not go for Chris Green. He may not play many games, but just to have the other option, this Akshar Patel-like option, I think that they may even go for him, honestly. And apart from that, there's Tom Banton, who's a very good player, and I'm actually, he just didn't really, the overseas spots, you've seen how it is with the bowlers, and with Tom Banton, I'm not really sure they would have been able to accommodate him, and I really hope another team buys him, because he's an absolutely brilliant player. And especially if a team who plays in batting friendly conditions buys him, I think that he'll really work out for them. And so yeah, that's on Tom Banton. And apart from that, they released Manimaran Siddharth, Nikhil Naik, and Siddesh Lad. And Siddesh Lad, seen him play in the domestic season for Mumbai, and he's kind of bided his time. He only played one game for Mumbai Indians, and he hit his first ball that he faced in the IPL for six, and I think it was off a domestic bowler as well. I think it's an Anurit Singh or something, and yeah, that's the thing is that he's had to bide his time, and then he's also been released by KKR. So I'm maybe someone else would just buy him as a squad player, and Nikhil Naik has also been released by KKR, and who knows, he may even be brought back by them. Let's say towards the end of the auction, where they kind of just need to get some players. He only played really one game, and he kind of he's kind of slowed the scoring rate a bit, or a bit, kind of considerably at the start, and also used up a review. And so, yeah, that's kind of the only game that he had played. So, again, there's nothing really much to say about the others. I mean, not in a bad way, just that we didn't really get to see enough of them at all. And in some cases, we didn't get to see any of them. And so, yeah, and they've got 10.85 crore left. So, you could say they've kind of released a surplus in their squad, but I'm saying it'll be interesting to see who they go for, because with 10.85 crores, they're probably going to end up relying on their overseas players heavily, or their main stalwarts heavily, and it may be, and I don't want this to happen, another scrappy performance where it's very convoluted, and just maybe the fact that the Indian players have to bear such a big workload isn't really great for them when they're just developing in their careers. And so it'll be interesting to see how things go, and it'll be interesting to see how KKR can break out of this cycle, because it's been happening for the past 2 years. And honestly, if maybe I think in 2022 they'll have this mega auction, but honestly, they're gonna have to break out of this cycle, because in 2022 they're gonna have to think, we have to kind of give a cushion for our upcoming bowlers. They can't bear this workload themselves. And when we get players, we shouldn't spend 15.5 crores on someone who, as good as a bowler he is very one-dimensional and isn't really a T20 bowler. And so it'll be very interesting to see how they go about it in the mega auction, and even how they go about with only 10.85 crores in this auction, and they don't really have that big of a squad either. And I think they probably have the smallest squad out of all the teams in the IPL. Either them or RCB. So, yeah, I think it may even be KKR actually. So, yeah, that's on KKR. So now there's RCB. And so in my video that I did of them when I talked about Isuru Udana, and I said this one thing, and the fact is that I said RCB's recruitment wasn't great, because let's be honest, if the IPL was played in Bangalore, their attack, they were lucky that it was played in the UAE, because their attack kind of relied on strangulation, which with Washington Sundar, and the way Adam Zampa bowled, it wasn't kind of a way where come and hit me kind of thing. It was kind of still bowled alongside Chahal to kind of strangle the opposition. And so there was Washington Sundar, Adam Zampa, Yuzvendra Chahal, Isuru Udana with his change-ups, and so you can already see that this attack actually relies on strangulation. And so they were helped by the fact they were playing in UAE, where that kind of a method, is something where it is hard to... The thing is, look, the tracks are actually pretty flat. As in, it doesn't really offer much for the bowlers, but they are slow. And so let's say if you get about 85 in the first 10 overs, there's no guarantee that you're actually going to double that, or you may actually just manage to double it. So you won't even you won't really be able to get that kick that you'd expect in more batting friendly tracks where you really try to get 100 off the last 10 overs. You'd probably just manage to double your score. And I thought the 174, just around there, was actually kind of a first innings total that kept a lot of teams in the game, and would have kept them in the game much more than if they scored that on pretty much any other track if you see in the IPL. I mean, 174, you wouldn't really... Yes, it's a team, the bowling side would acknowledge it's a good score, but they wouldn't go in thinking they wouldn't, that kind of would be hard to chase it down. And the batting side wouldn't go in thinking that they were in the game as much as they did in this 2020 seasons, where you saw 170 scores did win a lot of games. And That's why I thought RCB were helped by the fact that they had a bowling attack that relied on strangulation and played in conditions where strangulation was a conducive method of going about things. However, if they played in Bangalore, you look at the fact that they probably wouldn't have had the confidence to play Isuru Udana. And the fact is that there would have been Umesh Yadav and Dale Steyn. And Yuzvendra Chahal would have had to deal, maybe they would have played him in Bangalore as well, but it would have been way harder to contain the runs. And it would have been probably may have even changed the dynamic of their season. I'm not saying even about success or failure. I'm just saying the way that they would have went about things. They would have probably had a much more harder role playing in India than they did in the UAE. Because yes, in the UAE, maybe the fact that it was harder to bat as you went through the innings with the heat and the slowness of the pitch, it kind of the fact that they relied on AB de Villiers and Virat Kohli kind of showed, because they both kind of tried to play within themselves and kind of explode. And sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't, but they kind of didn't really. You see Virat Kohli, I mean, I don't think he had a bad IPL. I mean, he scored 460 runs, but the thing is, as I said, he actually only averages that 450s a season mark. I said it even before in the RCB mid-season review that I never really apart from in the 2016, where actually if you look at it, he scored 973 runs then, but really he's a way better player now than before. And I think that he probably would be able to tackle adversities much better now than he did. I mean, he still did very well then, but especially you saw that that's a thing. And I'm saying that he was in such a great vein of T20 form then. And I mean, even now he's still in very good form in everything. But I'm saying that as far as his usual contributions in the IPL, I don't think that I was expecting this real breakout thing, because the fact is that obviously with the kind of player he is and what he does in internationals, people kind of have different, and he has different standards for himself, and so do other people. But honestly, if for me, when he scores above 450 runs, I mean, it's a good season. And yes, you could say his impact on the tournament. No, did he really win games for RCB that much? I mean, you look at the 90, you look at the 72, and you'd think, apart from those, you would say he didn't really do that much. But what I saw was the fact that he did still get a lot of scores. He got 43, 48. I thought, he had this phase in the tournament where he was still getting a lot of scores. Maybe it kind of tapered off towards the end of the tournament. But then again, he still, if he had kind of got maybe 10 runs more in a few of those innings, he would have got 50s. And so he would have ended up with 5 or 6 50s in the tournament. And so he would have maybe got to 500 runs. And so you can't expect someone to carry your team that much, two players to carry your teams that much. And yes, Padikkal was very good as well when he got 550s, but obviously I mean his strike rate wasn't that great, but still he played well, and it was a team that needed batsmen to step up and score runs. And so that's the reason why I'm thinking they should really get an Indian middle order batsman, or even an overseas kind of a dasher. And I'm not sure how they're going to go around with their overseas combination, but there's one thing that they should do: prioritize the bowling, because they have the Indian bowlers who will be feeling like, I'll say $1 trillion after going to Australia and doing what they did in Navdeep Saini and Mohammad Siraj. I mean, those kind of experiences stay with you for life. And that would change the entire, despite the fact Siraj has been trolled in the IPL, I don't understand why, because honestly, I understand, he didn't have his greatest time at RCB, but you saw how well he bowled for Hyderabad in the domestic season and also for Sunrisers. I mean, you could tell that he was a good bowler then and there. So honestly, I just thought it was an unfortunate thing that he didn't really have the greatest time in RCB. But now that, he is, ever since that 3 for 8, as I said, he's just grown from strength to strength. His career's taken off. And in such a short time. He's become, he's broken into the Test squad to face England and won Australia Test series and probably the greatest series win of all time. And that's why his confidence going up into any series in his life will be so high because of the thing that has happened here or in Australia. And so those bowlers will be way better. They'll have confidence. They'll realize once we've pulled that off, we can do anything. And this won't go into overconfidence. And honestly, I actually hope that this confidence is always in them and they use it to kind of get success in pretty much every platform in which they play the game, because honestly, they deserve it for what they did. I mean, they are two very good bowlers, but especially after what they pulled off in Australia, I feel that RCB will go into this tournament and they'll be thinking, we've got a base to build from. Especially they'll go into this auction with 35.7 crores thinking, we have got a base to build from. And yes, that was on RCB. And a point on KKR, you would have kind of thought, I didn't really say who they should get. And that's because I honestly don't know how they're going to go about it. I mean, as I said, with 10.85 crores, they're going to have to probably get a few domestic players. And with resorting to domestic players, you may not really be able to get the roles you want. And in the roles that you do want, if they work out, it's well and good. But if they don't work out, I mean, if they kind of just don't get a game, you bought someone to play that role. And in the end, you didn't really have the confidence in them. And so it's not good for the player and it's not very good for the team financially. And yeah, that's the one KKR. And, as I said, for RCB, they have 35.7 crores to kind of get a really kind of a dashing number 5 player and kind of get a few more. I would say, look, they have Navdeep Saini, Mohammad Siraj. I honestly don't think they need, and I mean, maybe they need an overseas quick to supplement those two. But apart from that, I would say that they just need to get that batsman at number 5 and probably get another all-rounder in place of Morris. And if they do that, then I think this team, with the confidence that the players in that team, hold, I think that this will be a very interesting team to watch in future seasons. And they released, as I said, Chris Morris, Aaron Finch, Moeen Ali, Surudana, Shivam Dubey, Umesh Yadav, Pawan Negi, Gurkirat Singh Mann, Parthiv Patel and Deo Steyn. And Parthiv Patel's retired. I feel very bad that he has retired because, he's a very good player. And he's played for so many years in many different franchises, and people kind of always, they've known him for that kind of baby face that he has and always giving his teams the start they required in the power play, despite the fact that he struggled after the power play, but still, he was a kind of person who you'd want someone like that in your squad. he's really, I felt very sad. Every Indian would have felt sad when Parthiv Patel retired, but it is what it is. And now I think Mumbai Indians' scout. And yeah, I wish him good luck as well. There have been a lot of times in this video already where I've said I wish people good luck, because I think we're kind of the household names in, at any level, kind of in Indian cricket on a global level. I mean, everyone has heard of these players, watched them play, and seen them play for many years. And so that's the reason why it is very sad that this kind of a turnover is happening for some of these players. And Umesh Yadav, as I said, didn't really work out for RCB apart from one season in 2018, and even then at the death he was very expensive. And so apparently I heard Mumbai Indians are looking for him, which may be good, because then he can bowl with Trent Bolt up top and Bumrah's overs can be saved, for the middle overs in the death, because, the T20 is actually, I think it's the most strained format for captains, because they're kind of going to have to they have to think a lot about what they're going to do, how they're going to manage their bowlers. And even let's say if an opening bowler who, maybe your best bowler bowls 2 overs up front. I mean, that's it. I mean, you've seen Bhuvneshwar Kumar for Sunrisers. He bowls 2 overs, the first 2 overs, he bowls 2 overs in the power play, and then he bowls 2 overs at the death. And that's the thing here. I mean, apart from those two phases, you can't really use them at all, and you have to rely on your other bowlers. And so that's why T20's formats, as far as captaincy is concerned, and rotating your bowlers, especially in that aspect, and dealing with the fast-paced games where the other teams try to be proactive. I mean, you look at in Test cricket, if the other team just sits there and blocks, then you may kind of be able to sustain that pressure. But in T20s, when the other team is constantly looking to score, I mean, it's very taxing as a captain to really be, involved in kind of just be kind of shrewd and kind of make those decisions, and they may or may not work. And so that's why I'm saying it is good for them that, if they are looking for someone like Umesh Yadav, who's a class bowler. I mean, he's class in red ball cricket, and when here's the thing about him is that in actual conditions for swing bowlers in England, you saw, I mean, I didn't really expect him to bowl that well, honestly. And this is the thing, this is the reason why. He does well when there's just enough swing. And I call this tropical swing. And what I mean is this. When there's just a tinge of grass on these Indian pitches under lights, where you can just swing the ball around. And he does much better in that kind of an environment than when you go to England, where there's, actual, it's conducive for swing, that proper swing bowling. And you kind of thought he wasn't really able to make the most out of those conditions, and you kind of saw that the England batsmen, especially in the first test, they kind of picked him off a little bit. And so, yeah, that's on Umesh Yadav. And getting to Dale Steyn, yes, he hasn't retired, but I feel that he was kind of a pedigree buy for RCB, kind of a last minute buy, because they saw that in the games that he does play, that they thought in the game that he does play, with his, with the outswingers that he bowls, could he really still, with the class that he has he's been with how sustainable he's been bowling for so many years. I understand he's had injuries for the past few years, but by sustainable, I meant that he's been bowling for so long, and so he knows what he's doing. He's such a heritage name in cricket, and we need a talismanic player like him in the bowling attack to really lead the way. And fortunately, it didn't work out. Both Dale Steyn and Umesh Yadav didn't have great tournaments, especially Umesh Yadav. He played 2 games, bowled 7 overs, and gave 83 runs. I mean, it's a horrific time. And yes, he went to Australia, and I thought he bowled very well, but again, it is what it is. And that's on Umesh Yadav. And then they released Pawan Negi, Shivam Dube, Moeen Ali. I mean, I'm not really sure where they're going to go, where he's going to go, because he seems to be a bit low in confidence. And I'm not writing him off, because you've seen what happens when other people try to write people off and then they win series. But the thing is that it'll be interesting to see who goes for him. I definitely think he will get a team. I mean, he's such a good player, and he's good enough. He should get a team. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see where he goes. Someone who needs this batsman who can really score quickly, can act as a finisher as well. We saw for RCB in 2019 against KKR, he came in at number 3 and really whacked the bowling around. And that's the thing. It's just, if they can do something like that, with Moeen Ali, these other teams, and kind of utilize his bowling and maybe play him as a finisher if they want to, I think that he can still be a value at any side. And Pawan Negi then again didn't really feature much. So he played for CSK before, pretty good. And ever since he kind of moved to when they were Delhi Daredevils, I think that he hasn't really been able to discover the heights that he had in CSK. Especially there was one season, I think it was in I'm not sure, I think it was 2015, I'm not sure, where I think he was then from the next year he was actually the highest paid Indian in the IPL. I'm not sure it was 2014 or 2015. Then in the next season, he's actually the highest paid Indian, I think, in the IPL, or maybe uncapped, I'm not sure. And Delhi Daredevils bought him, and yeah, they hardly bowled him, they hardly utilized him, and I think ever since then he hasn't really been able to find his way. I feel a bit bad for him, but again, sadly, it is what it is, and so I hope that he can find another side, and he may just be a squad player, but at least he'll get a team. And if he does get the opportunity, as he's a very he's a very good left arm off spinner, and he can also hit the ball around at the end. And so yeah, that's on Pavan Negi. And Gurkirat Singh Mann, it was kind of a thing where you waited for him to. You could tell that batting with Virat Kohli, even if Gurkirat Singh Mann was at the other end, you kind of just thought that it was. You kind of felt happy for him. You thought that you saw he had a very big smile on his face, but unfortunately, things didn't really materialize in terms of runs. And yes, he played this really good innings in the last game of 2019, where him and Shimron Hetmeyer had a partnership of 147 and got that consolation win for RCB. It was a very good partnership, and he has played a few good innings over the years, but unfortunately, he hasn't really been this standout in regular contributions, unfortunately. And so I can understand why RCB are letting him go, and I think that someone else may buy him towards the end of the auction just for a base price buy to kind of get a batsman if they need him, because he's not a bad player by any means. But it'll be interesting to see where he goes, and if how they go about him when he's at the squad. So yeah, I mean, as I said, that's on Gurkirat Singh Mann. And so this video is getting a bit long, and so that's why this will be a two-part video where I go through SRH, Kings 11, Rajasthan Royals and Delhi Capitals in the next video. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe, and please share this video with your friends. And remember, this is my opinion. What's yours? Just before I go, it's now the next day, and yeah, it's snowing in the UK and many places, and definitely my place. And so yeah, kind of this is how it looks like. If I can show the camera, sorry, I don't think I can. Here it is. So yeah, so this is how it looks like, and it seems very, it's very fun to walk in. And I'm kind of, I heard it was rumored, but I didn't actually think that it would be true. I kind of expected to wake up to something normal. So yeah, just before I go, that was just a kind of thing to show that it is snowing in my area. So yeah, I'm pretty happy, and as you can see, I am walking outside right now. So yeah, thanks for watching, and see you next time.